Okay, good morning, everyone. Happy Tuesday, and welcome to my 100th show, live with you here every Tuesday and Thursday. Tuesdays in English, Thursdays in Spanish. We talk about immigration headlines, news of the week. I help you interpret it, know what matters, know what's important, answer your live questions, comment on all of the nonsense, be together in community. And it means so much to me, those of you who have shown up, who have been here, who have followed, shared the show, been a part of the resistance with me. It has been an honor and a joy. And there are many, many more shows to come. But how fun are these balloons? So anyway, welcome to show number 100 of El Show Sin Fronteras, the show without borders. So I'll give you a quick reminder. If you're new here, my name is Kate, Lincoln-Goldfinch. I am an immigration lawyer based in Austin, Texas, and I have a law firm, Lincoln-Goldfinch Law, that represents immigrant families all around the 50 United States. Immigration law is federal, and that means that I can represent people in other states. With my law firm, we're a virtual law firm, and we do family-based immigration, deportation defense, detention cases, and humanitarian cases. That's my area of expertise. It's my passion. And that's why I'm here with you to talk to you about all things related to family-based immigration cases and policy. So if you have comments or questions, feel free to drop them in your comment box. I'm in all the platforms you're watching somewhere on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn, etc. And feel free to comment or put a question in there. So let's get started with the news of the week. I'll start with the great news. The No Kings rallies on Saturday, March 28th were epic, were historical. There were more people who showed up to protest than ever before in any nationwide protest in United States history, as far as, these things have been counted. And it was massive. I watched the full Bernie Sanders speech at the Minneapolis March. They had Bruce Springsteen, they had Ilhan Omar. It was amazing. And I started my day on Saturday at the Bastrop rally, which, Bastrop is a very red county and city, and they had tons of people out there ready to march. It was really cold in the morning, and then it heated up. It was beautiful by midday, which was when I was in Austin for the No Kings rally that started at Austin City Hall and everyone marched across the bridge and ended up in Auditorium Shores. And personally, for me, it was a wonderful moment because I got to be on stage with my parents and the Austin Resistance singers singing a song that my parents wrote and helped perform with the crowd. It was like a definite apex moment for me in my life. And I got to speak at both the Bastrop and the Austin rallies about Know Your Rights stuff. And the gist of my talk at both rallies was a quick review on Project 2025, which I recently, because I didn't have other reading material, I read it on a flight. And really what struck me about Project 20, like if you read Project 2025, 900 pages of it, in a year into the second Trump administration, a lot of it has been accomplished and achieved. And another thing that really hits you over the head with it is that Texas is ground zero. We are the guinea pigs for implementation, and that's because our state leaders, our governor, our lieutenant governor, our attorney general, the majority of our legislators are conservative and on board with implementing Project 2025. And that looks like attack on women's bodies and women's right to control their own health care over their body, attack on the LGBTQ community, vouchers, right? Educational spending accounts is what they refer to in Project 2025. That's vouchers in Texas. And then, of course, immigration enforcement, and the fact that in Texas, we don't have these massive roving patrols like we've seen in Minneapolis. What we have in Texas is local law enforcement enforcing immigration laws. Primarily DPS state troopers are pulling thousands of people over on pretextual traffic stops, like license plates kind of askew, or windows are tinted, or we're going slightly over the speed limit. And daily, people in Texas who have been here for many years, have no criminal history, U.S. citizen kids, all the things that would warrant someone being able to stay here, they're being pulled over and disappeared from their families. And we're seeing it happen, but we don't know what we're seeing. So if you're driving by on the highway and you see DPS pull someone over, that in all likelihood is a disappearance, but it just looks like a regular traffic stop. So one of the things that we really talked about is the importance of knowing our rights and our Fifth Amendment right to remain silent and say, I don't wish to speak to you. I'm exercising my right to remain silent. I want to speak to a lawyer. You actually have to affirmatively exercise your right to remain silent. There's case law that says if you just remain silent, you aren't exercising your right to remain silent. It's paradoxical, but you have to say the words, I wish I am exercising my right to remain silent. We also have a Fourth Amendment right against search and seizure. So we need to say, no, I don't consent to a search. No, I will not open my door of my home or the private area of my business unless you have a judicial warrant signed by a judge. We also talked about the importance of all of us out in the community being really great witnesses, meaning if you see an enforcement action or you see DPS pulling someone over, get as much evidence of that as you can. And here's why I say that. We all know what happened with Renee Good and Alex Preddy, right? That was just a massive uproar. And that's because there was really good multi-angle video footage of what occurred. And in both of those incidents, DHS lied to our faces about what had happened. But the American public could say, you're lying, and we see it. And it created this movement and this actual change in the way that the Trump administration is enforcing immigration policy. But do you know what? Many other people have been killed in the same way, including a man named Ruben Ray Martinez, who was killed in the same way as Renee Good a year earlier. But that was never reported because there wasn't bystander footage. There was body cam footage of the cops that eventually came out a year later, but there wasn't this immediate reaction from the community because we didn't have the footage. So what I want to share, in terms of like all of us who are like, what can I be doing? Number one, of course, the usual, come out to the rallies, make sure you're registered to vote and you're voting, make sure you're communicating with your legislators. I was just on a panel on Sunday with Congressman Joaquin Castro, and he said to the crowd, it does matter when you call me, when you register your tally for or against some policy that actually matters. And you feel like you're just going into some empty voicemail box, but it actually matters. So do all of those things, but also be a really good witness to enforcement actions. Be brave enough to pull over and record the incident. And I'll share with you, like, I understand the hesitation. The other day I was driving to out of town and I was on 290 going east, and I saw a cop about to pull someone over, and it looked kind of like a work truck. And I was like, oh God, okay, what am I going to do? I have, I have two people in my car and we're kind of on a schedule, and I need to see what's going on. And the activist and the advocate in me was like, pull over, get out your camera and watch what happens. But then the human in me was like, oh, my friends aren't going to want to do that. It's going to make them nervous. We're going to be late. So those are the things that go on. I would urge all of us in those moments to see it as a civic duty to take your time and record the event, especially if it's DPS. In this incident, I ended up keeping going because I saw it was, I think it was Elgin, it was Manor Police Department, and Manor PD, as far as I know, is not collaborating with ICE. So I decided this is most likely just a regular traffic stop. But if it's DPS, I do think that we should be pulling over and recording. Now, don't interfere. Don't get in their way. Don't escalate the violence. Don't make the cops, feel agitated, because that could impact the person who's being detained. But do record plate number, how many agents are there, et cetera. And if you see someone being thrown to the ground, get out your phone and record it. So that's what we talked about at the No Kings rally. But it was epic, epic turnout nationwide and in Austin. And I just want to give a major shout out and gratitude to all of the people around the country who are the organizers of the No Kings rallies. I mean, if you think about the enormity of putting on an event like that has like musicians and speakers and people and permits and vendors and, a million logistical things. And people who do this stuff are volunteering. No one's getting paid. It's not like some big concert promoter, where they're getting rich off this stuff. So I really appreciate the people who use their talents in the organizing of these events. It is a heavy, heavy lift. Okay, next point of news item for y'all is this was a bombshell, and I did a video on this and it didn't get as much attention as I thought it warranted because of what a bombshell it was. There is a filing, a federal lawsuit in New York related to the arrests at the courthouse that are occurring. And DOJ has been arguing all along that this ICE memo from March of 2025 that allows for civil courthouse arrests is the memo that authorizes all of these actions that have been going on at immigration courthouses over the last year, where thousands of people who are following the legal process are going and being detained and separated from their family. We've seen the videos. We know what's happening. Well, in that filing, in that specific case, the DOJ attorney submitted a letter to the judge that said, oh, you know what, Your Honor, we got it wrong. That memo didn't actually authorize courthouse arrests at immigration court. That was supposed to apply to civil courthouses like family courts or courts where people have business disputes. It wasn't supposed to apply to the immigration courts. And that it gave us a peek into what's been going on, where somebody misinterpreted this memo within the agency last March. And the result has been all of these thousands of arrests at the immigration courthouse. And the audacity of the Department of Homeland Security to just submit a letter to the court like, oh, kind of got it wrong. Sorry, whoops. And meanwhile, the thousands of people have been traumatized. It just made my head explode. So we'll be watching to see what happens after that letter in that particular case. Next, let's talk about the closure. Of course, we've all seen the long lines at TSA. That's because TSA is not being funded in the government shutdown, but it could be. TSA is part of the Department of Homeland Security, which last summer in the Big Beautiful Bill got an additional $75 billion on top of its already bloated budget and funding. Yet the Trump administration in the government shutdown is choosing not to pay TSA agents who are calling in because they're not getting paid. And then these lines are ridiculously long. Why? Because then the Trump administration gets to send in ICE agents to the airport, blame it on the Democrats, and have ICE patrolling regular parts of the United States, which was in Project 2025. It is in their plans to have ICE, to have us start to become familiarized with ICE in our midst, polling locations, armed agents at polling locations in the United States of America. Can we just talk about how unacceptable this is and how, if it hasn't struck you as just shocking, you are a boiled frog. Do you know what I mean? What they are boiling us, we are a big pot of frogs being boiled. I think is that the analogy? So it's crazy. It is crazy that ICE is at the airports. It's crazier that ICE could potentially be at the polling locations. And you know what? They just need to start paying TSA with their massive DHS budget. Let's start there. And then also the government shutdown is because the House Republicans rejected the Senate deal to continue to fund TSA. So they're going to tell you it's the Democrats. In fact, the White House Facebook page says that regularly. They're lying. They are lying. Pause for coffee. Okay. Now we are going to applaud the state of New Jersey. The legislature passed and the governor signed legislation restricting immigration enforcement participation. Oh, what a world. Way to go, New Jersey. It's so far from anything that would happen right here where I sit, which is in Austin, Texas. But that there are 3 bills that the governor signed. One is a mask ban for ICE, which every state should have. If you're having to mask yourself, you might want to ask yourself why. Okay. That's all I got to say. And then also reducing cooperation between New Jersey and federal officials on immigration enforcement and preventing state officials from sharing immigration statuses of New Jersey residents with federal officials, which I love. This is so good on privacy protection because the surveillance state that the Trump administration is creating in going after, voter rolls, IRS data, child support records, et cetera. Like they're trying to access all of this data, and it is up to really the states to say, we're not turning this stuff over to you. And I'm really happy to see a state like New Jersey passing a law like this. Okay, next news item is related to this. Is if you're in the field of immigration, you will recognize what I'm talking about. If you're not, you're going to be like, what? There's something called the DOJ accreditation program. And this program is really important because what it does is it allows people who are knowledgeable and expert in immigration but aren't attorneys, who work in nonprofits like Catholic Charities, for example, or nonprofits that have attorney supervision. It allows people to apply for accreditation. And once someone is accredited rep through this program, they can complete immigration applications. They can even, in some instances, go into immigration court. And this is an expansion of legal service access for indigent immigrants, because this means that nonprofits that provide services to immigrants can have their non-attorneys act like attorneys. And it's been a really great program because they have to have a certain amount of hours, a certain amount of expertise. They have to have strong oversight. I mean, there have been many times over the years where I have recommended to paralegals that if they're at a nonprofit, that they pursue accreditation. And in fact, my very first employee at the law firm had been a DOJ accredited rep at a nonprofit where we had worked together. And she was like the most knowledgeable person at the whole organization. And she wasn't an attorney, but she was an accredited rep who was able to actually represent people and give legal advice. It's a very good program. Well, the Trump administration is not interested in expansion of legal services. And so they have gutted the DOJ accreditation program, and all of the attorneys who were reviewing applications for accreditation have been reassigned. And what that means is for DOJ accredited reps, is that renewals are going to be impacted. Obviously, new applications and renewals are going to be impacted. And I can guarantee you that nonprofits that provide legal services are scrambling and very, very upset about this news today. Next, there's some headlines which sound more bombshelly than they are. The Trump administration announced that they were going to do an asylum freeze after the National Guard shooting in DC. They can't freeze all asylum applications, and so they've lifted that asylum freeze. What that means is that more affirmative asylum cases are going to be moving through the pipeline. So I see all your comments coming in. Keep them coming. Here's an extra news item. Today is Farm Workers Day, formerly Cesar Chavez Day. So we'll call it Farm Workers Day. That's great. Because here's the deal. This movement for farm workers has never been about one dude or even one woman. I mean, there's been a lot of talk about let's rename everything Dolores Huerta, or how about just the farm workers? How about Farm Workers Avenue, Farm Workers Street, Farm Workers Day, the Farm Workers March? How about everybody? I mean, that is great. So today, happy Farm Workers Day. The movement for farm workers has been so hard fought, so necessary. The abuses of farm workers over the decades, centuries really, but decades, and the strength and the bravery of the people who have stood up and marched is an inspiration for all of us. So happy Farm Workers Day. And hopefully you can do something to celebrate. Maybe to celebrate, donate to an organization that is supporting farm workers. One news item that we've discussed recently is about agricultural visas. Of course, the Trump administration, because of immigration enforcement, has had trouble staffing in the agricultural sector. So they've expanded guest worker visas, which theoretically I'm not opposed to, but in this instance, they've done it in an abusive way by slashing the required salary for farm workers. So they're like counting housing as part of the wages. And, basically the changes that they've made have cut the required wages for farm workers by 30% when they're already obviously very low. And so exploitative policies like this only hurt everybody, including the owners of the farms, of course. So they're not doing, big surprise, spoiler alert, they're not doing it right, and they're being exploitative in the way that they're solving the problem. Okay, let's get to your questions. Okay, Nayeli, could you explain what habeas corpus case is in Spanish, if possible? Yeah, you bet. Let me start with English, and then I'll do it in Spanish. Okay, so historically, when somebody gets picked up or they're detained, they seek an immigration bond before an immigration judge. And you have to prove two things: that you are not a flight risk and you're not a danger to the community. But earlier last year, the Trump administration, through the Department of Justice, decided that anyone who is detained, even if they've been in the country forever, have sick kids, et cetera, if they originally entered without a visa, that they're not eligible for bond. So that meant that more than 50%, close to 70% of the people who have been detained are not eligible for bond. So instead of seeking bond before an immigration judge, what you have to do is file a case in federal court. It's called a habeas case. And you have to seek release from a federal judge, who then will either order release or order the immigration court to issue a bond. So it's kind of like this federal court. It's like suing them in federal court. It's a federal court workaround on a detention case. That's what habeas is, and that's what we've had to start doing on many of our detained cases. I will say that because you're in federal court and these federal judges generally are like judicial and they read and follow the law, these cases are successful and you can get out of detention. But they do end up taking a little more time and costing more money. That's the downside. Un caso, I'm going to just explain this in Spanish quickly. Un caso de habeas es un caso en donde una persona que no califica para salir bajo fianza de la Corte de Inmigración porque entró sin visa, que es una nueva política, tiene que traer su caso o brindar una demanda en Corte Federal para salir, y eso se llama un habeas. Entonces es otro asunto en otro sistema de corte para salir bajo fianza, y la mayoría de esos casos están siendo exitosos, pero es un otro costo y otro tiempo de procesamiento, pero la mayoría de los casos son exitosos. Esto es habeas. Thank you, Nayeli. Okay, and you also said, Nayeli, Rep Castro is the only one from Texas that has answered my emails and calls about the Dilley Detention Center. I'm sorry to hear that the rest of them have not, but I will just give Rep Castro a shout out and say he has been really vocal about family detention. He was really involved in that Liam Conejo Ramos case. He's been involved in a couple of other cases, very outspoken. He's visited the detention center, and I'm really happy to see the level of attention that he is choosing to bring to this issue. So kudos to you, Rep Castro. Thank you for all you're doing. Do I have a podcast? No. Maybe I should. I'll think about that. I'll plug that in. We have all sorts of ideas. And then Junior, can your removal order be suspended? Yes, it can. Suspension of a removal order is possible, but I will say this Trump administration is detaining everyone who has a suspended removal order, like an OSUP is what they call it. Those people, in my experience, are being detained. Now, if you have a removal order in absentia, you can file to reopen your removal order. And so that is possible if you weren't given notice of your hearing. But the best thing to do, Junior, is for us to talk to you and have an individual consultation. That would be the most helpful, because these cases can get a little complicated, and I want to make sure we're protecting you in the best way we can. Okay. And then Lucy, do you know when they're going to stop with the deportations? Not anytime soon. There's no plan to stop with the detention and deportation. There is a massive detention complex in the United States, and the main owner of these places is called CoreCivic, but there's several of them, these private prison companies who earn billions and billions of dollars on the detention of humans. And in the United States of America, Billionaire corporations are incredibly powerful because they are the people who get people elected in this country. And so many legislators are incentivized to continue to detain people in these private prison for-profit facilities on an indefinite basis. That is one of the major dark sides of all of this, is the money that comes from it. And so the Trump administration is aware of the optics of the street sweeping that they've been doing and the killing of citizens that they've been doing. That brought a lot of backlash. The new play that they're going after is what they're doing in Texas. So Texas is, again, like with Project 2025, Texas is the breeding ground for what we're going to see nationwide. And we know that this is true. This is why Kristi Noem was fired and Mark Wayne Mullen is the new Secretary of Homeland Security. And this is their new playbook, is these secret, silent, invisible detentions and disappearances of people by local law enforcement, as opposed to, National Guard coming in by the thousands, or CBP coming in, or ICE coming in with their like tear gas and, protests and things like that. They don't want to do that anymore because they saw how angry it makes us. So instead, what they're doing are these invisible disappearances of people through these agreements with local law enforcement. And that's why, like, what New Jersey is doing is so important, because New Jersey is saying as a state, we're not doing this on any level of law enforcement. Whereas in Texas, DPS is essentially ICE at this point. And the legislature has ordered sheriffs and police departments to cooperate on some level. It's varying, but on some level, all the police departments, all the sheriff's offices have some type of cooperation with ICE. And that's what they're after in all of these states, is getting local police authorities to enact these arrests and detentions, because we don't see it. And that's how they get more people. And so that's the plan. And that's why it's ever more important to stay informed and aware, to watch shows like this, to read the news, to be aware, to, stick with Representative Castro, things like that, because if you're only sort of lightly paying attention, it's going to feel like it's dying down, but it's not actually dying down. It's increasing. And that's why we all need to really stay aware and reactive. Lucy says, how do I protect my 3 kids? I've been here since I was 4 years old. Well, number one, let's have a consultation to see if we can get you legal status. I don't know if you don't have legal status, but for immigrants who don't have legal status, I'm looking to see if I have one of my safety packets around here, and I don't. What I have, if you go to my website, it's abogadakate.com. On the resources page, there's a safety packet. I think I put it at the other office. So there is a packet that is for Texas only, but they have this in every state. In Texas, we have a document called the Voluntary Caregiver Authorization. And this is a 5-page document that you complete for each of your children, right? You have to have one for each kid, that allows you to select who watches your kids if you get detained. And that's a really important document, because in some cases they are so sloppy. I talked to a woman whose son was left in the back seat of the car when her husband was taken. Or some kids go into foster care. So what you want to do is decide who's in charge of your kids, and make sure, obviously, you have enough trust in that person to care for your kids, but that if you end up going back to your home country, that person is going to get your kids back to you, right? That you get to decide what happens with your kids. And so that's the best, most protective thing you can do, other than getting a consultation to make sure that you are pursuing legal status if you qualify. Katya says, ban for-profit prisons, 1,000,000%. It is so awful that these people are making a profit and cutting costs, right? When they're out for profit, they're cutting costs, and that's why people are dying in detention. That's why kids are starving at Dilley, because they won't eat the food. That's why medical care is not adequate, and conditions are horrible, sleeping conditions, the climate, it's either too hot or too cold, or there's not enough water, there's not privacy. Like, All of these things are because some nefarious organization is cutting costs in order to maximize profits so that they can have a good, profitability quarterly report for their shareholders. Like legit, that's what's happening. And people, children, babies, autistic kids are being detained, and grown-ups too. Grown-ups who have been taken from their families, 85% of whom have no criminal history. So for-profit prisons have absolutely got to go. It is so gross. Clement, my husband got a 10-year permanent bar in 2017 in Juarez. He's about to complete. Wow. He had his I-130 and I-601A approved. Okay. Right now, the waiver that you want to do is the I-212A because you still got to waive the 10-year bar. Okay. And so even though he waited the 10 years, there's still a waiver that you need, and you can waive it before the 10 years have run. So reach out to me, send me a DM. We'll do a consultation. And you're right, 2027 is his 10 years. So now is the time to do that third waiver that you're going to need. So he'll be ready to come back in. Nayeli. I love that name, Nayeli. What can we do to help the kids in detention centers? The best thing you can do is donate to the organizations that are providing the legal support to get these kids out. I'll highlight 2 organizations that are doing important work. One, I'm on the board in full disclosure, and I was a co-founder, is called Vecina, which means neighbor in Spanish. Vecina finds and trains pro bono lawyers to take cases to get kids reunited with their families or to get out of detention. And Vecina is doing a big project on habeas cases for kids in detention. So giving them money is helpful. You can also sign up as a volunteer with Vecina. Another organization that would be good is called Texas ILC, which I think is Texas Immigration Legal Center, maybe. They're relatively newish, like 3 or 4 years, but so good, so impactful. Everybody who works there is really brilliant, doing important work. Their projects are great. Their resources are great. And they're doing a project to get all the kids out of Dilley. And so they're placing habeas cases. So Vecina and Texas ILC. And I think we're reaching time. So I'll give you guys your action item of the week. Thank you. So remember, one of the things we want to do with this show, other than talk about the news and talk about your questions, is have action items, because I don't want us to feel like, oh, the only thing we can do is vote or donate or call our legislators, because there's so much more we can do. So there is a mass call. What is the date today? It's today. Okay, so there's a mass call today. I would imagine it's tonight at 6 p.m. about what's next. It's a post No Kings, what do we do now call. And I will post, if you follow me on socials, I will post information about that today. And then also learn about May Day actions that are happening near you, and we can support laborers. So those are your 2 action items. You could also always share this video. I'm going to be here for show number 101 in Espanol on Thursday. Thank you for being here with me on this special show. It is such an honor to do this journey with you as my community in the world of AI and virtual everything. Even though this is virtual, the best thing we can do is build real, actual human community. And I feel you here with me, and I appreciate you. I have one more thing coming in. While I'm waiting for that to come in, I will answer one more question. I want to know what I can do. I hired a lawyer to handle my father's case, and now he is facing deportation. What options do we have? Yes, consult with an immigration lawyer. Always consult with an immigration lawyer. Our consults are free. They're virtual, they're free, they're available on the weekends. So DM me if you need specific information. Yes, the waiver is an I-212, but reach out and we'll look at it and make sure everything's done properly. And I want to make sure you don't need to redo the 601, etc. So reach out, let's do a consultation, no charge, okay, for the consultation. Thanks, guys, for being here with me today. Happy Tuesday. I hope you have a great rest of your week, and happy Farm Workers Day.